Hey everyone, this is Scott from StartMedia.com, and in this video I'm covering Rank Math SEO. I covered it back in later 2019, and I was very displeased with it. Its user interface was clunky, it was fairly obnoxious, and it was honestly more difficult to use than it should have been. They've fixed this fairly recently, and now it's a lot easier to use. As I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of plugins having functionality, having features just for the sake of having features, and it was previously to that point. Now, though, the plugin is much better. We're going to go through the plugin. I am going to go through its older interface as well, just to show you how to configure it. But more or less, it's just so much more streamlined. They did a great job. Maybe they saw my advice. Maybe. I don't want to take credit, though. So here's what we're going to do. When you install it, you're going to get a wizard. We're just going to skip that wizard, and we're going to go straight to the dashboard. The dashboard completely reworked. Looks great. It allows you to easily turn on the features that you do need and to turn off the features you don't. For instance, you have a 404 monitor. The 404 monitor will record 404s in the database, and you can then redirect the 404s to the respective pages. I'm going to end up turning everything on just to walk you through everything, but for most sites, you obviously shouldn't do this. It's quite odd that the AMP plugin works without AMP being installed, but we'll just let that slide. We're going to install everything that isn't the BBPress or BuddyPress because, quite frankly, most of you are not using it, but we will have WooCommerce because this is a WooCommerce staging site. Now, for most websites, this is basically all you need to do is set it up, and the default settings are totally sufficient. To start, though, we're going to go to the settings window for the 404 monitor. The 404 monitor, basically everything after the dashboard is their more complicated mode, but this is mostly just meant to help you navigate the settings. So 404, it has a logging limit. I do recommend setting a limit. Oftentimes browsers will try to search for resources that may not exist. For instance, if you're on Safari, it may try to search for a Safari icon that doesn't exist in the browser. Those types of 404s do get logged, and when they're logged, they can spin up and fill the database quickly. You see this all the time with the redirection plugin if you don't decrease how long the logs are saved for. So I do recommend leaving it to something like 100 is totally fine. Most of the time people don't even bother to pay attention to the logging. They basically just use a broken link checker or SEMrush or whatever tool they're using to monitor for 404s, and that's more sufficient for them. You have the simple mode as well and the advanced mode. Advanced mode will create more detailed logs. If, as it mentions though, your log might increase quickly. For most sites, simple logging is totally fine, and it'll say this user went to this URL and this URL doesn't exist. And then you can go ahead and redirect them if the page does exist and they just mistyped it. You can also exclude paths of URLs that you do not wish from getting logged by the 404 monitor. So you could do this to exclude the default icons by Safari and favicons and other useless 404 errors that are bound to appear. And then you could choose to ignore query parameters. Basically, this is supposed to help against bots, notably, who are trying to use a query string as a form of SQL injection. So they go to the website, they put a query string at the end of your index.php or whatever your homepage URL is, and they put a string that says insert something into the database, and it's long and it's complicated, and frankly, you don't need that information logged. If at 404s, the server blocked it and it wasn't able to perform anything. Assuming though you have been following the other videos, you should have a proper firewall in place to protect you. That's really all there is to the 404 monitor, though. It's great and it's simple. I'm personally one of the mindset of I don't leave these active because I don't monitor my 404s that much. I check for broken links, and that's totally sufficient for me. The AMP plugin is not installed, so we're just going to skip past this, but Rank Math will basically just rework its tags to work with AMP pages. Image SEO is now where you get to start modifying some of the on-page aspects. So for instance, if an image doesn't contain an alt attribute, it will automatically generate it. It can generate it from, say, the file name. This works so long as you've actually been paying attention to your file names. I recently covered another plugin that will automatically generate alt images based on the content of the image, and it's quite effective at that. but it is a little bit expensive, so that's why I couldn't end up recommending it. But I do recommend you always add alt attributes to your images if you can. Add them in the WordPress media library, because even though they're auto-generated, if they're taking it from the file name, I can't tell you how many sites I run across and the images that are uploaded are example-1 or example-2, and they're not relevant to what the image file contains. Now, you can change the alt attribute to a variety of different items. You could set a counter, which I think is pretty silly, the file name, which is silly. You can include the site name, but honestly, unless it's your logo, that's pretty useless. Most of these are pretty useless. If you're honestly just trying to be kind of lazy with it, you could probably do the post category if it's a post, or a post tag, one tag, not multiple, or you could just slap the product name on there. But really, it's best if you just set it up to use a proper alt attribute that you write, because no matter what you put, you're probably not going to get any relevant image searches by slapping your post title on an image that has a picture of a cat. It's just not likely. Adding missing alt title attributes. Title attributes are a little bit, they're kind of, you're not going to get a lot of SEO benefit, but if you want to add them, you most certainly can. Just make sure if you add the title attributes, you put the same thing as your alt attributes. So we'll just hit the save button, just so that way we had it active. Then you get the link counter. This will count the total number of internal and external links from your posts. Totally fine. Basically just like Yoast SEO. What it does, it checks your post and it says, okay, you have linked out to another website 3 times, and you've linked to your own articles 5 times. And this is good because you should be linking both externally and internally if you're trying to write content, because it can help build your domain authority, and your internal links obviously will increase your ranking of internal pages. It's part of the things that everybody forgets is to have good internal link structure. This can help you at least keep track of the number of links, and I think that you should leave this functionality enabled. For the local SEO and the knowledge graph search, you enable it, you come on over to this nice looking settings panel, and you choose whether you're a person or an organization. It's basically the exact same settings as Yoast SEO. And you can choose if you're a company, choose organization. If you're an individual, so you're a blogger, choose person. And you fill out the name, you include your logo and the URL of your homepage. That's really all you need to do. There isn't like the advanced like a Yoast SEO local SEO functionality, but for most users, this is basically what you need. For redirections, this is the redirect tool. It's baked right in. It's basically like using the redirection plugin, kind of. So for instance, by default, you can choose to strip the category base. I don't recommend doing this. Leaving the category base is a good way of indicating what a category archive is, and it's a good way of just structuring your content in general. Redirecting attachments should be enabled. Your attachment URLs should be redirected to their respective attachment. So you go to your media library and you find an image and you go to your attachment page, which is just a blank page that contains your image, and it will redirect them to the URL. The weird thing is this is the old method. So what it does here is it redirects them to the post they appear in. This is a contrast to what Yoast SEO does, which is to redirect the attachments pages to the attachment itself. I wish that they updated that, because otherwise what happens is they redirect the attachment pages to the home page, which is kind of odd. I just think that it should redirect directly to the asset in question. Personally, I feel like WordPress core should remove attachment pages altogether, but that's just me. No follow external links. You should definitely not no follow external links. You should only be no following external links if it's to a third party that you either don't trust or it's an affiliate program. So you are using Amazon affiliate, you should be no following them, but you should not no follow all external links. That is absolutely silly and terrible advice that people have passed around. You could choose to no follow image links. Basically what it does is if you point to an external image, it will no follow them. I can't think of a time when somebody points to an external image. Everybody just downloads or scrapes them from wherever they can nowadays. But again, it's along the same idea. You should only no-follow content if the domain that you're referencing is sketchy and you don't want to pass any page rank and you don't want to be associated with that domain, or it's a referral link and you should not be passing page rank to it because it's a referral link. And then you can choose to open external links in a new tab or window. This is something that I don't recommend you do. It's definitely against user experience expectations in most cases for the URL to open in another window. For instance, if I want to open a URL in another window, I would just click, instead of left clicking on it, I could just use the middle mouse key, and then that opened it in a new window. And that's totally sufficient. If I wanted to open it in the same window, I would expect it to work on my left click, and in this case, it did not. So that is something to keep in mind. The schema and or structured data settings is pretty cool. It's basically the standard default Yoast SEO settings in all realness. Basically, you come to your post and you can change your default post title, your post description. You can choose to change the schema markup type of your post type. So by default, it is an article, but you could change it to, say, none of those would really work for a default post, but you have the option to change it if your site is structured differently. You can also choose to change the article type. So if you're writing a blog, you would set this to blog. If it's a news article, you could write it to a news article. And if you're just writing a piece, like if I was for certmedia.com, I would just put article. For our post robots meta, you could choose to select custom meta, such as no follow and no archive for single post page. I wouldn't really bother. You can choose to do it for single post. Otherwise, the default meta will be used. This is honestly totally sufficient, these defaults. I would just leave it. One thing it does do is it'll generate link suggestions, which is great. What it'll do is it'll read your post, just like Yoast SEO actually. It reads your post in the premium version, and it'll list out some link suggestions. On the right-hand side, you copy the links, and you're supposed to link your post to it. Great bit of functionality. Should definitely be used by everybody who's using the plugin. You can choose to set your primary taxonomy for your breadcrumbs. It should almost always be categories unless you're really weird with your tags. That's totally sufficient. Your bulk editing, you can choose to add bulk editing columns to the post listing screen. Basically, you come over to your post screen. I'll show you what this looks like. Give it a minute to load up, and you could choose to modify the content bulk, edit this field, and you can choose to set the focus keyword right away. I wouldn't personally see a good reason to do that unless you're switching from another SEO plugin. But I would personally just leave it disabled because I think this screen gets cluttered enough as it is. Now, you can basically follow through and do the exact same settings for your other pages. The only thing that I do recommend, and they've done it by default, is for the attachment pages, they set it to no index. Something that is commonly confused. When you set attachment pages to no index, it doesn't stop your images from being no indexed. It only stops attachment pages from being no indexed, which is just a page that just contains the image. It is not the image itself. Your images will still be indexable. This is just to stop thin and useless content from being indexed. Since we are on WooCommerce, I will touch the product section. One thing I do recommend is, as you can see, it generates it from the excerpt. And if you scroll all the way down, you can get the product short description. Personally, I would suggest recommending the WooCommerce short description because this is typically a line or two, quick sentence that you're trying to describe what your product is. And with this information, you are pretty enticing for somebody to buy the product. And so it just makes a good product meta description if you're not writing them by hand. Product archive, you could choose to optimize your product archive here. Wouldn't really mess with it too much. And the rest of this is basically just should be left at the default. The default settings are much better now than they used to be. The role manager will allow you to modify which user roles can access the rank math settings. The defaults are fine. Really, unless you're like in a case of WooCommerce and you need to add extra rules for your shop manager, I wouldn't really go messing with it, in all honesty. It's not that important. It's kind of like the SEO manager in Yoast. I have honestly never used that functionality, and I don't think anybody ever does. But for some reason, it was a good idea, and everybody decided to copy it. You can connect the Search Console data directly into Rank Math, kind of like what old school Yoast SEO did allow. Personally, I think that this is... It's not something I actively use. I just use Google Sitekit to gain my Search Console data to aggregate it with the Google Analytics data, and that's typically what I need. If I'm trying to do anything that's more in-depth, I just go to Search Console directly, because this is a bit of an expensive add-on to run. I personally would not suggest using it because it's just not needed. If you're running Sitekit, you're going to get all the Google Analytics data that you need anyways. But that's just me. The SEO Analysis Tool is basically the bread and butter of any SEO plugin. It will allow you to analyze your sites by linking to a rankmath.com account. I am personally not a fan of having to link to an external account. But what you do is you can choose to give them rank math data. You'll click activate. I'll just sign in with my Google. Weird. We'll just sign in with my work email real quick, and there we go. You're about to activate. Click OK. And it'll start giving you their analysis functionality. Personally, again, I just feel it's a little bit odd that they make you sign up for this to gain the SEO analysis. It's a little bit odd. But you go over here, you click setting. Now you can choose to start a site-wide analysis. This runs their tool. As you can see, it's absurdly quick. And it says 100% complete. And there you go. Refreshed it. Now, they gave an SEO score of 74. That's pretty good considering I haven't done anything with this site, and it's just a random staging website. So we're going to go through and I'm going to walk you through what this content is so that way you can see it and understand it a bit. So for instance, it says automatic updates are not enabled. Okay. Not really an SEO related thing. Basically, it just allows Rank Math to be auto updated. I personally don't recommend auto updating plugins unless you have a really good and robust backup system in place, because I've seen all kinds of good plugins update and break things. Rank Math has done it, Yoast SEO has done it, WooCommerce has done it many times. So I don't really ever recommend auto-updating plugins, but for the sake of the video, we'll just clear it. Common keywords. You have the most common keywords we found on your page. Inline, social, plugin, remove, block, just, post, site, warfare, load. Okay. Sure. Probably just scrape that from the post, I'm assuming. Not all that impressed. Yep. It took it from the home page from this post. Cool. It's pretty useless, in my opinion, what this data is right here, but it exists. The SEO description was found and is 27 characters long. That would not get a green check mark in my book. That is way too short. I'm surprised that it actually let that pass. This is not sufficient. Just because an SEO description is present doesn't mean it's good. If you're trying to entice somebody to click and rank, a 27 character long description is not sufficient. You should be trying to maximize your usage of the 156 odd characters that Google allows on any given day of the week. You could choose to use the H1 tag. It says that H1 tag was found and it's the WooCommerce Playground, which is the site title. That's fine. H1 tags, they are important, more or less. Totally fine. I'm glad that it at least detects it. It says one or more H2 tags were found. This is good. Really, the one thing you want to worry about when you're worrying about H tags is just that you're using a common sense structure. If you have the site title as your H1, then your post title would be an H2, and the sub-important details, so the H would be an H3, and anything smaller than that would be an H4. Typically, you don't really get much lower than an H3 on most websites, but so long as you're using it, that is good. Let's see. Image alt attributes. All images on your page have alt attributes. Do I have any images? I guess not. I'm going to take that though. Keywords in your title description. One or more keywords are found in the title and description of your page. Just in site. Just in site. the meta description in the title. Okay, those aren't keywords. If anything, those are more like stop words. I wouldn't count site as a keyword. I certainly wouldn't count just as a keyword, but apparently the test determined that it was passing. I wouldn't pass this title or meta description personally, but I'll let that slide. Your page has a correct number of internal and external links. I think as far as actual ranking goes, having more external links isn't necessarily indicative of a problem, but what you should keep in mind is if you are using too many external links, you're probably not providing enough value to your users. If somebody visits the website and you have a long article, maybe let's just say it's like 1,500 words, and you have 20 external links, but you have 3 internal links, that means users are going to have more value, at least in the user's mind, of going off of your site to find more useful information. If you're having too many external links, that means you're just not giving enough useful information or enough useful references to keep users on your site. So I get that the link ratio is a thing in the testing tool, but just keep in mind that the most important thing is if you're having too many external links, it's typically a sign that you don't have enough useful content to keep users on your site. The SEO title, yeah, it's 52 characters. It's passable. It's fine. I just wouldn't pass that type of description, but that's totally fine. Your tagline is set to the default, just another WordPress site. I'm glad that it flagged this, but I'm disappointed that it passed everything else where this was present. It kind of gives you that false sense of security. I still come across sites that have the default, just another WordPress site tagline, and I have to fix that. Just set it to literally anything else other than just the default, because it is the most generic looking tagline that you can come up with. Your blog is public. That just means that it's indexable. Your post permalink structure is set to post name. This is good. As I mentioned in my permalinks video, post name or the category post name is ideal for most websites. For most users, just use post name. There are 3 posts, 8 pages, and 19 products with no focus keyword. The focus keyword has no actual impact on your site ranking, but it does stop the tool from generating useful suggestions, so keep that in mind. Page titles missing the focus keyword. This should fail this, in my opinion, solely because if there is no focus keyword set, then you're not able to have that focus keyword in your title. Search preview for the advanced SEO. Your mobile snapshot, it's basically going to tell me if it looks good or not. Your page contains a no index meta tag. Do I really have it set to no index? Where does it say that it's set as no index? Maybe it's in the robots.txt. There's probably a very good chance it is set to no index somewhere. Maybe under the reading options. I'm not really sure where it got this. But it's clearly set to robots index. We'll just let it pass and say it's some kind of issue. The www and non-www versions are not redirected to the same site. This is a good catch. www should be redirected to the non-www if you don't use it. You just want to keep one consistent URL for all your users to go to, because Google can sometimes treat the www as a subdomain that's then going to try to rank separately. Now, it's normally pretty good at preventing that, but just keep that in mind that you want to keep users going to the same URL just for the sake of consistency. Some open graph meta tags are missing. That is great. Okay. Kind of confused by that, but we'll check it in a little bit. The schema metadata was found. Awesome. Your robots.txt does not prevent anything. Correct. You have not linked Google Search Console. I'm not going to. It's kind of a silly thing in my opinion. The sitemaps, you have one or more sitemap. That is awesome. I love having sitemaps auto-generated. Let's just take a look at what sitemaps have auto-generated. Perfect. That's actually perfect. It did not accidentally create the attachment pages. Sometimes SEO plugins will create the attachment pages even though they are set to redirect. So that's totally sufficient. And let's see, performance. It does give performance suggestions. That's fine. More than 20 requests can result in slow page loading. Okay, so I'm just gonna come out of and say it right now. Almost every one of you are going to get flagged for this, unless you have a really basic website and you've merged everything. You're gonna have more than 20 requests. While it's ideal to minimize the number of requests, it's nothing that I would drive yourself crazy over. So some JavaScript files don't appear to be minified. How is this not minified? Are they complaining over the one line at the top that's included in a WordPress core? Not really sure. And then this, it doesn't appear to be minified, but that actually is a 404 error, so that's technically an incorrect flagging here. And some CSS files do not appear to be minified, and that is correct. The default Gutenberg blocks for storefronts is not minified. So any sort of optimization plugin would take care of that part. Security. 4 plugins on your site are publicly visible. Kind of. I wouldn't use this plugin for security and performance recommendations, but it's at least covers some of the basics. Theme visibility. Directory browsing is disabled. If this is red, I have a video that covers how to disable this. This is very important. If directory browsing is enabled, I can download whatever file I want from any part of your server and see anything that exists on it. So this is a good thing. And it does say you should have HTTPS. I agree with that. And Google Safe Browsing Alerts does appear to pass the site. So this is good. My problem with the SEO analysis is I just don't agree with some of the suggestions. And just because you have 100 on here doesn't necessarily mean that your site is optimized. For instance, it passed my SEO description for no reason. That is not a passable SEO description. So just take it with a grain of salt. Like all tools that offer suggestions, it's not meant to be a standard to follow. The sitemap, we'll just check over the sitemap settings real quick for you. I do recommend you include the featured image too, even if it does not directly appear in the post content. It is ideal to include featured images in the post sitemap if you can help it. So we're just going to refresh it and revisit. And it says that there's no images attached because I didn't bother to attach them to the post. But if I did, they would show up. And I know because I've tested this. Great sitemaps. It will ping Google and Bing for you automatically when the sitemap is updated. That's totally fine. And you can choose to exclude a post or a term right here from being indexed. Under taxonomies, we'll just check over the taxonomies real quick. By default, they choose to disable tags from being included. Personally, I say tags should be indexed. If you're having a solid site structure, wow, it basically disabled product categories too. That would be terrible for your SEO. Product categories should most definitely be indexed. That's going to get more traffic on the average e-commerce website than the actual products themselves from Google search. That's not a good default. That should definitely be fixed. I will probably suggest it to their team, but more or less, that's terrible. You should definitely be indexing your product categories. The reason you want to index product categories is that's what's going to actually land. So if somebody searches for the word accessories, that's what's going to make sure that it appears. And it does look like it's set to index, but that it wasn't in the sitemap for some reason. Very weird choice on their part. But yes, product categories and product tags should always be indexed on a WooCommerce site. That's going to always get you more traffic. And as it does mention, attachment pages are not going to be included in the sitemap, and they shouldn't be. You definitely do not want them to be indexed. We're kind of coming down to the wire on everything in this plugin. They really streamlined the user interface, which I appreciate. It was a monster before, and it was terrible to use. So they've definitely done an excellent job of cleaning it up. we've basically gone through everything. I'll show you the setup wizard, which you should never use, but you go through the setup wizard and you could choose to use easy or advanced, or you could choose the custom mode, which is coming soon apparently. And your website is compatible to run with Rank Math because of these check marks that they gave. For most users, just go ahead and click easy, and you'll click start the wizard. You'll go ahead and make sure you include your logo and your default share image. We'll click save and continue. You can choose to connect your search console. We're going to skip that because I think it's useless. And there you go. That's it. And you can choose to auto-update the plugin. Rank Math has definitely come a long way since the last time I reviewed it back in November. The user interface is much better. I still think the individual settings pages could use some cleanup. There's a lot of things on here that the average user just doesn't need to modify. For instance, under the local SEO, it gives you everything you could imagine. And under social media, you can basically add everything. I feel like a lot of it can be fairly autonomous in that it can be cleaned up. Like for instance, the date archives and the author archives could be fused into an archives box, kind of like how Yoast SEO structures it. The local SEO tab is awesome. The social media tab is fine. It looks like it does most of the heavy lifting for you automatically and doesn't let you mess around with it. The product tags and categories are totally fine. Same thing with the post tabs. The Sitemaps should be a little bit smarter by their default settings because they didn't index it did not include the product categories and product tags by default. Those should definitely be defaulted. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and take a look at the Rank Math suggestions. This will be done in the Gutenberg/block editor. If you're using Classic Editor, they did update it to include some of the functionality, but you should really consider swapping to the block editor. You get the 9 out of 100. This is the sidebar view of the plugin. This is where the meta box will live. You can choose to edit your snippet just like you would here. It'll open up a giant pop-up box, and you can set your title tag. It will tell you if you want to search for a snippet, you can easily add them like that. And it will let you know if you're in the green, which is where you have enough content for it to be sufficient. It says that my permalink structure is a little too long. How to remove social warfare, inline, CSS. That's probably as good as it's going to get without stripping out important details. You could probably just remove the word remove, but then even still, you're kind of at the limit. I wouldn't worry too much about your permalink length. Your description, perfect. It tells you you have 158 out of 160 characters. That's awesome. The social tab is really simple. It says it was shared by Scott. It gives me a Twitter. Looks fine. Recommends that I upload a 120 by 628 image or a 1200 by 628 image as well for Twitter. It'll automatically import it from your featured image. You could choose to add an icon overlay to the thumbnail. So for instance, you could choose to add the play icon. It can get you penalized, as it does mention though. If you use this, basically what it'll do is it'll add this like little GIF icon. You see this if you've ever scrolled through Facebook. You'll go through and you'll have an image, and it'll look like the image that you want, and it'll actually just be a little GIF icon, and you click it and the image doesn't play, but it takes you to their website. I have seen that pages get penalized and removed for exploiting this, so just be wary of doing it. For Twitter, you can try to do it as well because it'll take it from the Facebook tab. You can change whether you want to use a summary card with the large image or a summary card, an app card, which is great only if you're using an app. So for most users, this is completely irrelevant. And a player card if you have a video that you're embedding. In my opinion, this section here allows for a lot more flexibility compared to Yoast SEO. But Yoast SEO, I think, automatically does the player cards automatically if you have the video SEO plugin. You got to take what you want there, here and there, but honestly, it's fine. It's totally sufficient, and it makes it easy for you to add the focus keyword. It'll let you mark it as pillar content. For those of you who are unaware, this is basically exactly what Yoast SEO's cornerstone content is. It's exactly the same thing. You mark it, and it basically just puts it in its own special tab in its own little box, and it says, this is your most important content. This is great if you write a lot of content on a regular basis, but you want to organize your content around what's most important. So you mark it as pillar content or cornerstone content, and it's just a means for you to organize it and to remember to update it frequently and to check back with how it's performing. We're just going to put this as social warfare. And as you can see here, it automatically generates suggestions for you. Again, Yoast SEO used to do this, and it doesn't do it anymore, which kind of miss that feature. Now, personally, I tend to pick my content before I write the post. So I go out and I find my focus keyword before I write the post, and that's how you should be doing it. But this can help you, I guess, with planning. It mentions that my content is only 376 words long, and it should be at least 600 words. Everybody will have their own opinion on this. Typically, I say anything that's 500 words is fine. They say 600 words. But let's just see what it suggests. The focus keyword is found in the content, and it appears in the first 10% of the content. So this is also basically what Yoast SEO does. It says it should be in the first paragraph. I agree with that assumption. The focus keyword is in the URL. That's correct. It should be. The focus keyword used inside the SEO meta description. Again, that's ideal, so yes. And you're using the focus keyword in the SEO title. Awesome. Under additional, let's see what it suggests. Focus keyword found in the subheadings. So I have a subheading somewhere, so like a heading 2 somewhere, I think. Yep. Well, I don't seem to have it in a subheading. Yeah, I'm not using it in any subheadings, but we'll just say that more or less this is fine. Add an image with your focus keyword as the alt text. This is true. You should have an image that represents the focus keyword. So if your focus keyword in this case is the social warfare plugin, you should have the image related to social warfare, and the alt text should include something with social warfare. A lot of people just tend to use whatever they find on the Pexels, and I'm guilty of this too. They download it, they upload it to their site, and it's a picture of a cat, and it's about social warfare. I'm plenty guilty of that, I will not lie, but they are correct that that is ideal. The keyword density is 1.33. That's totally fine. Everybody's going to tell you that keyword density either matters or doesn't matter depending on who you ask. To me, the keyword density really should just make common sense. If you're trying to rank for a key phrase, it should appear somewhere in the post content. Whether it should appear X amount of times or not, though, is going to vary depending on who you ask. This is fine, though. It says the URL is too long. I've already tried to strip it as much as I can without it being completely terrible and irrelevant. So we're going to ignore that. Personally, I don't think that this matters too much anymore. But if you have simple content that you're easily trying to rank for instance, I could have just made the post URL social warfare. But if I write another post about social warfare as a review, and I wanted that to be the social warfare URL, I'm going to get into the rabbit hole of post overlapping other posts just to have a shorter permalink structure, which ultimately probably won't matter too much for most types of content. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to this for most types of content. I would say your cornerstone pieces probably should have a shorter permalink structure. So let's say I reviewed Yoast SEO. I would make a post and it'd be Yoast SEO Review 2020 on my blog post title. But on Cert Media, it'd be certmedia.com/Yoast-SEO. And that's what I would use. Great, you're linking to external resources. Am I? I think maybe I have GitHub on there. At least one external link with the do follow found in your content. That's good. You should be linking. We are searching in database. What? I don't know what that is. I have no idea what we are searching in database means. I'm assuming it's an error, maybe related to the internal linking. We couldn't find any internal links in your content. That should definitely be fixed. You should be linking to your own posts and pages where they are relevant. Title readability. Okay, so now we're gonna get into like the sort of readability content. It says your focus keyword used at the beginning of your SEO title. Correct. That's totally fine, and I agree with it. Your title doesn't contain a positive or negative sentiment word. The general concept here is, and they kind of have a blog post that mentions it. The fourth, like, here you go. So if you browse Facebook, you might have come across 7 life hacks that will blow your mind. The fourth one is the best. This isn't so much a SEO suggestion as it is a social media suggestion. It's basically to entice users to click the post by making it sound more engaging. So if I was doing, if I was writing a review, I'd call it like a social warfare review 2020. Is it the best share plugin for WordPress? Something like that. And because I use the best, it is a positive and enticing word, but it also leaves it as a question, and that would drive more users to click it. You don't obviously need to do that for every post. Not every post needs to sound like it's some kind of marketing gimmick, so just keep that in mind. Your title does contain a power word. Again, that's basically just like the other one. Your SEO title doesn't contain a number. Not every title needs to contain a number. Not every post needs to have a number. I put my content on this channel with the year appended to it. So it's year 2020. For this video, the last one was 2019. The reason for that is most of my content is going to be incremental. So Yoast SEO, while I reviewed it this year in 2019, it's going to be an entire, I think I reviewed it in 2020 technically. But in 2021, it's going to be an entirely different plugin. There's going to be a large variety of changes. This is coming not even 1 year afterwards, but it is covering for 2020 because Rank Math has had a lot of improvement. But not every post needs to have a year appended to it. Some content is evergreen where it will, in theory, never get old. If you have a tutorial, for instance, on how to clean a leather chair, the process doesn't really change all that much, and you don't need to slap the year 2020 on it because the content doesn't really get old. And it will work whether it's 2025 or it's 2030. It's going to be exactly the same process. You take whatever cleaner I imagine you used, you grab some kind of microfiber cloth, and you go to work. Content readability. Use a table of contents to break down your text. No. Not every post needs a table of contents. This is a very annoying trend right now with content where users are just writing longer posts for the sake of having longer posts, and they just get around it by slapping a table of contents in there. Not every post needs a table of contents. There is a table of contents block in the works to come into WordPress core, but not every post needs to have a table of contents. If the article is only 350 words long, there's not enough content that it really justifies a table of contents. This isn't some 8-page long essay and you need a table of contents to structure your pages on. It's just not that complicated. You were using short paragraphs. Short paragraphs are fine. They're mostly meant for making sure content is easily readable and digestible. The general consensus, and that if you've ever used Yoast before, you'll know the readability analysis. You should aim at around an 8th grade reading level for the broadest reading group, unless you're writing content for a larger audience. So you're writing it for a educated, college educated audience, then your niche will change. But for most people, making it at an 8th grade level is ideal. If you're from another country, I do not know what the equivalent of that is to you. Basically, this would be like somebody who's like in their 14 years old is roughly what that would equate to. And then the final suggestion is using images or videos. Yes, you should most definitely use images and videos in your content. Nobody wants to read a standard text post anymore that has nothing interesting to look at. In fact, most people don't want to read anymore. They want to get the post or the video, and then they want to get it synopsised down to them. This is everything in Rank Math SEO. They have a ton of blocks. I can show you if you're really interested in how the blocks work. But as far as actual features go that you'll be using on a regular basis, this is basically what you have to work with, and it's a lot. You have 3 blocks: FAQ by Rank Math, How To by Rank Math, and Schema by Rank Math. The schema is a thing. Add the schema generated by Rank Math anywhere on your page using this block. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on it too much, but that exists. A FAQ works just like the Yoast SEO one. You write your question and your answer, and you add it all the way down, and you can appear in the rich snippets for FAQ blocks. And then the how-to block, again, right out of Yoast SEO, does exactly the exact same thing. You have your description and your steps and the titles and the duration. Works great. That's really everything there is. I couldn't cover anything more other than the search engine integration, the search console integration that I skipped because I believe it to be utterly useless for most sites. If you have any questions about this, you can please feel free to ask in the comments below. Make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.